Hey everyone, in today's video I'm going to sketch with water-soluble ink, but first let me show you the art that inspired me to try this technique. So a few weeks ago I was on a sketching trip in Untitled, which is in Taiwan, and I saw the black and white sketches of Khoo Cheang Jin, who is a painter from Penang, Malaysia, and they were terrific. So this is one of them that was sketched on location. This looks like it was drawn and painted with a brush pen because, well, the strokes, they have a lot of texture, and you can see a lot of texture with the washes. This probably drawn with a brush pen as well. This is one of his colored paintings. This is black with some color, spot colors, red for the roofs. Another painting. Let's just focus on the black and white sketches. This was drawn with a Fude nib pen. A Fude nib is a fountain pen with a bent nib, so that pen is capable of creating thin and thick lines. And oh, I can actually zoom in. So take a look at how expressive this sketch is. So this was drawn with the pen, and for the washes, water was added to dissolve the water-soluble ink. This is very nice. Another one of those ink sketches with water-soluble ink. See how expressive the lines are, and also the strokes. I will put links in the video description below to where you can check out more of his artwork, and also check out the videos that I've made for the sketching trip. All those are in the video description below. This looks like was drawn with pen and ink as well, with water-soluble ink. So some of the sketches were drawn with brush pens, some with pen and ink. I love the play of negative shapes for the trees. Usually trees are close to black, especially on a very sunny day. But here you can see this nice use of negative shapes. Very nice. Another sketch. This was drawn at the hotel lobby. Alright, I'm very inspired now. Let's draw something. Ink can be waterproof or water soluble, and they can come in disposable pens like this, in ink bottles, or you can use the ink in fountain pens. Before you use the ink, always test it to see how they behave with water. So these are some quick sketches I've drawn with the various pens I have. Some are waterproof, some are water soluble, some are very water soluble. Some of the pens, they surprise me. For example, this is the Pilot V pen. Sometimes it's called the Pilot Varsity. When there is no mention of whether or not the ink is waterproof or water soluble, usually it is water soluble. But surprisingly, this is quite waterproof. The other surprise is the Rotring. This pen here. I usually associate Rotring ink with waterproof ink, but for some reason in this particular pen, the ink is not waterproof. Next we have the Pentel Tradio. So this is very nice. This is very water soluble. You can see the wash here. This is darker compared to this. And this ink, it dissolves very easily. So this is the pen that I'm going to use later. And lastly, there is the Pilot V5 Tech, which is water soluble. The wash here is also quite light compared to Pentel Tradio, which has a good range of values from light to dark. And this sketch was drawn with bottle ink, more specifically the Winsor & Newton Liquid India ink. I usually associate India ink with waterproof ink, but not all India inks are waterproof. For example, this one is not waterproof, but this one, which is also from Winsor & Newton, it's waterproof. So do test your inks first before using them. Main difference between India ink and the ink from disposable pens is India ink is heavily pigmented, so you're going to see a lot of texture, which can be quite nice. And here as well, India ink is made from either carbon particles or lamp soot. So you can see a lot of beautiful textures when you dissolve the ink. If you want to follow along with today's tutorial, you can download this reference photo from the video description below. Disposable pens are more convenient compared to dip pens with ink bottles because you can just use the pen straight away. You don't have to bring ink bottles outdoors, so that's very convenient. And once you are done with drawing, you can just keep your pen. So this is the Pentel Tradio that I'm using. It's quite an expensive pen. This pen has a felt tip, so the lines, they are not going to be perfectly solid. You're going to see some textured edges with the lines. When it comes to sketching with water-soluble ink, you may want to have more lines so that there is something to dissolve later. Like for example, this door here, this should be black. I'm going to put more ink here so that I can dissolve this later on. This is quite a nice pen for sketching, but on rougher paper, sometimes the ink can splatter when the felt tip gets caught on the paper fiber. This sketch is almost done. Let me just draw some people in the scene to make this a bit more lively. Let me add some dots on the ground, and later on I'm going to add water and see what happens. When sketching with water-soluble ink outdoors, it's easier to use it with a water brush because it's more convenient and easier to keep. You can see how the ink dissolves. This is very nice, very convenient for creating quick washes, and very nice for doing light and shadow studies. So for this edge here, edge of the jetty, I drew 2 lines so that I can have more ink to dissolve. Seems like the shadow is coming from the left, so I can paint some shadows here. There's shadow underneath here. So this is the area where I drew with a lot of ink to make this darker. And if the ink wash is not dark enough, you can use a brush pen with black ink later to create additional contrast, which is what I'm going to do later on. Because some of this part here, it's actually kind of dark. And also the water is kind of dark as well. So this area, you see, this is a very big area and there is not enough ink for me to dissolve. So maybe I'm going to add some more ink there, maybe at the bottom there. Let's see what happens when we draw while the surface is still wet. I'm also going to add some more lines here so that I have more ink to dissolve. So you will want to test which pen is more suitable for the type of drawing you do. You can get thicker pens with thicker nibs, or pens that can produce thicker lines so they can get more ink to dissolve. It's better to draw when the paper is still dry rather than draw while it's still wet. When the paper is dry, it can absorb more ink. So when drawing on wet surface, it doesn't work as well. And this is where I create extra contrast with this Pentel color brush pen that I have. The ink inside is actually waterproof. So I'm just adding some contrast, adding some textures. The water is kind of dark, so let me just paint here. The reflection under the boat is very dark. It's close to black. So I can paint this quickly with very broad strokes. And I like brush pens. I like the way they create textures like this. It's like you can create additional highlights very easily. You cannot do that obviously with just pen and ink. So this part here, it's not dark enough. Let's see if this is waterproof. Oh, it's actually not waterproof. I got it wrong. This is very surprising. I thought I refilled this brush pen with waterproof ink. Oh, another thing to note is some of the ink, when you dissolve them, they will appear to look warm. Some inks, the wash will look cooler. So if you want your grays to look more harmonious, try to use inks that dissolve to the same color temperature. So here looks like this ink is warmer, but the ink from the Pentel Tradio is actually cooler. This is definitely a technique that I'm going to use more often because this is such a quick way to add light and shadow to create quick sketches. Alright, thanks for watching this video. See you in the next one, and do remember to check out all the links in the video description below. Bye!